Hello everybody, it's AJ back again with a midweek TMG channel update, and this week I'm going to be bringing you ghouls and ghasts, and a bit of the backstory and history and lore in Dungeons and Dragons. So let's get started. First of all, let's go over the stats of what a ghoul is. It's a medium undead humanoid, generally. They are chaotic evil. They've got an armor class of 12, hit points of 22, 30-foot speed. Their strength is 13, dexterity is 15, constitution's 10, their intelligence is 7, wisdom of 10, and charisma of 6. So they're not highly intimidating or charismatic. They have damage immunity to poison and conditional immunities to being charmed, exhausted, or poisoned because they are undead creatures. They have dark vision out to 60 feet, and their passive perception is 10. They speak Common, generally, or whatever language they spoke in life. Their bite attack is +2 to hit, and does 9 points of piercing damage to a creature, or their most fearsome attack is their claws, which are +4 to hit, and one target takes 7 points of slashing damage, and the creature, if they're other than an elf or an undead, must succeed on a difficulty class 10 constitution saving throw or be paralyzed for 1 minute. The target can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of its turns, ending the effect on itself on a success. Now, an important point here, saving against a ghoul's paralyzing effect does not make you immune to that ghoul or any other ghoul's paralyzing effect. So they can carry on slashing at you, and you have to carry on making those saving throws. So if you have a swarm of ghouls, even with a difficulty class 10 saving throw of Constitution, which is relatively low, there is a good chance that you will fail, and you only need to fail once in order for you to be paralyzed and the ghouls to do vicious, nasty, horrible things with you, including eat you. But they typically don't, and I'll get to that in a minute. Ghasts are stronger medium undead creatures. They're also chaotic evil. They've got an armor class of 13, hit points of 36. They're stronger, the strength of 16. They're faster, dexterity of 17, although they still run for 30 feet. And they're smarter with an intelligence of 11. Also a little bit more intimidating with a charisma of 8. They have damage resistance to necrotic attacks, as well as the regular ghoul stuff. Otherwise, they're pretty much the same, except they have a stench. And they are resistant to the turning effects of divine casters. So the Ghast and any ghouls within 30 feet of it have advantage on saving throws against effects that turn undead. So Ghasts are natural-born leaders of ghouls, and ghouls cluster to the Ghasts for the extra power that it gives them. They have the stench, which any creature that starts its turn within 5 feet of the Ghast must succeed on a DC 10 Constitution saving throw or be poisoned until the start of its next turn. On a successful saving throw, the creature is immune to the Ghast's stench for 24 hours. So it is one of those things where you can become immune to it if you save against it. And of course, being poisoned is no laughing matter either. You have disadvantage on attacks rolls and ability checks, including saving throws, those Constitution saving throws, that ability check. Oh, hang on. Is it? No, that's probably different. That's ability checks otherwise. Anyway, so yeah, it's still pretty nasty. Now, the history of the ghoul. The ghouls have been around for a very long time, back from the very first edition of the game, and they're ranked number 5, the most popular low-level creatures to throw against a player party because of that terrifying loss of control when your character becomes paralyzed, and their ability to wipe out an entire party if they score their hits and the players roll really bad saving throws in succession. So they're a sort of monster where the dice can turn on you really bad. However, they are they're fairly puny. I mean, the ghouls got a challenge rating of 1, the Ghasts has got a challenge rating of 2. So they're not that potent really, but they are, like most pack creatures, designed to work in tandem and gang up on you and flank you and come at you from all different directions, including out of the ground. So where do the ghouls come from? They have a lineage which stems back to one individual. Now, this was a elf called Dorazane. who was a nasty bugger. He he was the first of their kind because he was a worshipper of Orcus. So he was a cultist, worshipping the demon god of the undead. And he turned against the elvish people, obviously. He preyed upon them and slaughtered them and feasted on their and other humanoid flesh to honor Orcus. It basically shows that, I mean it. I'm really divorced from these people. I will do anything for you. And as a reward for his service, Orcus transformed him into the first ghoul. And Dorazane served Orcus in the Abyss as a ghoul for an indeterminate amount of time and created ghouls from the other servants that Orcus gave to him. So he had a retinue of ghouls, and he started the ghoulish lineage under Orcus's power in Orcus's domain. He was a favored servant. But at some point, Ynogu, the Gnoll demon lord, robbed Dorazane of his abyssal domain. So he incurred into Orcus's domain and messed everything up, as he's prone to do, sowed chaos. And Orcus did not intervene. Orcus had his own problems and didn't give a damn about what was going on with Dorazane, or as Orcus, who was his ghoulish host, as Ynogu did whatever he wanted to. And Dorazane was hopelessly outmatched. So when he wouldn't intervene on his behalf, Dorazane turned to the elf gods for salvation, and they took pity on him. And guess who took pity on him? It was probably Lolth or some other evil elvish god. And the gods helped him escape certain destruction, and since then, Dorazane has spared elves from the ability of ghouls to paralyze people. So this is why all elves are immune to the paralyzing touch of ghouls, specifically ghouls. This doesn't mean that elves are immune to other paralyzing effects. It's not a biological thing. It's a divine thing. It's a magical thing. It's a spiritual thing. It's a boon. And Ghasts generally, in the 5th edition version of the game, Orcus is infusing ghouls with a stronger dose of abyssal energy, negative energy, making the Ghasts stronger and a little more savage and able to gather together other ghouls in a pack in a cunning fashion to do its work. And of course, ghouls kill. So anybody that kills in the mortal plane and has a possibility of creating more undead, which the ghouls certainly do, that's okay with Orcus, and as far as he's concerned, that the ghouls are good things because they are his agents. They're his undead creatures that are loose in the mortal plane. Much like Ynogu has gnolls, Orcus has ghouls. So Orcus will use ghouls to weaken his enemies and sow dissent, and he'll send them in as assassins, things like that. He has a direct line to ghouls, and Ghasts in particular. And so if you wanted to have an agent of Orcus working on the material plane, so if Orcus was a big part of your campaign world, or had a plot involving Orcus somehow, or just the undead in general, Ghasts are his go-to, and they're his minions that he will send in, much like Ynogu would send in a Gnoll. So, the King of the Ghouls, Dorazane, was in the original listing in the Monster Manual under Ynogu, and he wasn't mentioned again until Dungeon Magazine wrote an adventure called Kingdom of the Ghouls by Wolfgang Bauer. And he was the major villain, and they fleshed out his role and his place as the master of the White Kingdom, or the Kingdom of the Ghouls. He wasn't explicitly connected to a lot of stuff. It's generally grown out of that, and yeah. And of course, back then they had the negative energy plane, or the plane of shadow. In the 3rd edition Book of Vile Darkness, the King of Ghouls was basically just an advanced fiendish ghoul, and there's been unofficial D20 supplements that provided various statistics for him. and he was promoted to the state of a demigod in the Libris Mortis uh, sub uh, supplement, which, by the way, is an excellent book. I really enjoyed that when that came out. He was given full game statistics in 4th edition Monster Manual, and a Temple of Dorazane is described in the 4th edition book Open Grave. And yeah, he's generally around. He's he's an enemy of many other sort of undead things like the Raven Queen, and yeah, he has various parts and various plots and things, but it's generally not that important. And a lot of it has been dropped because you don't really need to know a lot about him in um, 5th edition, because they basically given you the entries for ghouls, and let you have your way with them. And they are great to drop into anything. You don't really need to worry about a lot with ghouls. So what do they do? What's their ecology? So originally, ghouls were individuals in life who basically ate meat, a lot of meat. They were gluttons for flesh. They weren't necessarily those who were cannibals, but it's kind of implied that they were evil individuals that would slaughter to eat flesh, to the point where they didn't care about anybody or anything. They just wanted to eat meat. And that sort of sick craving transferred itself into a disturbed individual who didn't pass on, accumulated all this negative energy from eating so much meat and suffering, and rose as a ghoul that craved dead flesh. They don't typically eat living flesh, although they can take a bite out of you. They prefer to eat a corpse, carrion, roadkill, whatever. Humanoid flesh, definitely preferred. Ghasts were individuals who died in the act of cannibalism. So these were stronger and more cursed, hence the stench, individuals who preyed upon their own kind, who were traitors to their own life. And yeah, they rose as Ghasts, and they would hunt their own kind specifically and gather up packs of ghouls to attack living beings, to kill and eat them. Ghouls are generally happy to hang out in graveyards and things like that. They are not affected by the sunlight, so they can move around in the day with no ill effect. And they're generally not overly restricted by a lot of the things that other undead creatures are. They have a semblance of biology, although they do not need to actually eat or breathe. They are dead. It is simply an unnatural, ever-present, unquenchable craving for flesh that they have. So they seek out to eat meat for the act of doing it, for the perverse pleasure that they have in the act of eating a corpse or a dead thing. It's a memory of an experience. They don't actually feel full. They don't actually taste the flavor or anything like that. They don't require the food. They can go for an indefinite period of time locked up in a tomb or a sarcophagus or other such thing, aware but undying, and always tormented by the hunger, the craving for flesh. And that's basically where you put them. You put them anywhere and anywhere. They are great to drop into dungeons because you don't need to worry about what do they eat in the meantime. Nothing. What do they do in the meantime? Nothing. All they're doing is waiting for a living thing to show up so that they can kill it and eat it. That's what they do. They probably have, I mean, they have intelligence. They're an intelligent undead creature. So in many cases, they have a society of their own. They have their own, when left to their own devices, or when their craving is constantly satisfied, their bestial undead craving can subside somewhat to the point where they can actually interact with each other, and perhaps even have a semblance of society. But they are cursed undead things. They are abyssal. They are demonic in nature. So whenever a living thing comes along, or whenever there is flesh around for them to eat, they are jonesing for it. They can't think of anything else but killing and eating a dead person. Um, So that's basically it. I mean, they're much like vampires. They may seem urbane, they may seem to be talking to you, they may seem to be doing, or things that a civilized, intelligent being would be doing, but they are really a monster. They're a horror. They exist only to satisfy their addiction, and therein is the thing. That's everything they do is a deception, and they're good at it. They typically they do die. I mean, they have a few conditional immunities and things like that. They don't die of old age. They're eternal, but they do die from physical damage. And typically, much like Dorazane in his form as a mortal form, he's got iron hard skin and things like that. So typically, a ghoul will be desiccated looking, has very hard, almost marble-like flesh, and wicked claws that are capable of ripping apart a body, and they snap up and chew up bones, flesh, skin, hair, teeth, the lot. They eat the entire thing. They are not picky eaters, and they are messy. So if there's ghouls around and they've been eating bodies in a graveyard, there'll be no mistaking what they've been doing. They are rabid for the flesh that they eat, and yeah, Ghasts are a little bit more clever. They're a little bit more wise, but they're probably they're good enough to sneak around and manage to prey upon dead things, house cats and that sort of thing that have been thrown to the wayside, dead horses, livestock, things like that. They'll satisfy their craving as best they can, but they're eventually it'll get the better of them, and they'll go after living targets. They just can't help themselves. That craving just can't be stopped. Even though they don't need it, they can subsist without it, unless they're restrained or controlled, or cajoled or corralled. They eventually will out themselves as the vicious, horrible, cursed predators that they are, and they can't remain hidden forever. They can be entombed forever, and it's a horrible fate, really, when you think about it. This is a living thing that is living with an addiction. Well, it's not really living; it's a cursed thing. It's a program which is running its course over and over on loop, much like a ghost repeating a torment. This is a thing which is just a living addiction inside a dead body, and yeah, ghouls. They're quite hideous. How would I use them in the game? I would drop them in to be very disruptive. If a ghoul shows up in the middle of another fight with another creature, with the prospect of paralyzing you so that you are wide open to attack from anything, that's quite terrifying. So, although they have a relatively low challenge rating, they have a potential to be devastating in combat. And the fear and reputation that they have, and the excitement in the players, the trepidation in the players, is one of the reasons why they're ranked so high in the popularity. Because when ghouls show up, you're going to have a memorable fight, particularly if somebody rolls terribly. Ghouls, good critter. Another addition to the Undead series, which I've been woefully bad at getting back to. Thanks for listening, everybody. I'll be up with another video shortly.